Good evening, all you beautiful souls. Thank you for joining me on Soul Awakening. I'm your host, Anne Magdalene. I'm happy that you could join me tonight. For those of you who are joining me for the first time, welcome to Soul Awakening. And for those of you who are returning, thank you always for your support, encouragement, and love for the work that we do on Soul Awakening every week. So welcome, everyone. Tonight we are going to be welcoming back Dianne Bischoff James, who was with us in January to discuss her book, The Real Brass Ring. So tonight's topic is about manifestation, reinvention, and moving beyond the perceived obstacles standing in your way. On Soul Awakening, we've talked at length about manifesting the life you've always dreamed of, changing false perceptions and beliefs you have about yourself, and incorporating concrete tools to better walk your spiritual path. Now, we know that we've all come here with specific abilities and gifts, as well as purpose, but sometimes finding our purpose is difficult for some of us, and yet for others, finding the courage to fulfill that purpose can be a lifelong battle. Well, tonight we'll hear the inspiring story of a woman who acknowledged her true calling, mustered up the courage to begin fulfilling her life's purpose, and has written an amazing book that has and continues to inspire countless others to do the same. Dianne is a life reboot specialist, having rebooted her own life at the age of 40, and now she teaches others the tools to reboot their own lives. So let's do our usual opening prayer, our meditation, and then we'll welcome Dianne onto the show. So let's get in a comfortable position. As I said before the meditation, Dianne Bischoff James joined us in January to discuss her book, The Real Brass Ring. She shared with us some of the experience she had had that brought her to a place in her life that she felt she needed a reboot, and that's exactly what she did. So Dianne, thank you so much for joining us again on Soul Awakening.
Oh, thank you so much for having me back, Anne. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, good. I so enjoyed our talk last time. And the listeners did too. I had gotten quite a bit of feedback from it. So I'm thrilled that you've come back on Soul Awakening to finish our discussion about your book, The Real Brass Ring. And this time to go a little deeper into the book and look more specifically at some of the tools you provide, such as shortcuts for happy living. Dianne, would you just begin by refreshing our listeners' memory about the early part of your journey and what brought you to a place in your life that you realized you were in need of a reboot?
Absolutely. My journey started at about 38. I call myself, a soldier. I was following all of those prescriptions. I was into the baby boomers, so I think we were the first generation or so of women in particular that were told, you can, earn the bacon, fry it up in a pan, and never let your husband forget he's a man. And so I always like to go back to that ad because I remember it like it was yesterday, and it was this model of this woman in these high heels going out, making hundreds of thousands of dollars,
Right.
making sure dinner was ready, and then making sure her guy was happy. And I'm thinking, well, sure, that's what we do. It's the everything model. So I was a victim of that, and I think I was trying to achieve everything that they had set up for that American dream, all the external trappings. And so I had a big job. I had a degree from Northwestern and went after all the stuff. And so it was kind of, somehow that ad sunk into my cells, and I was trying to live it. So I got the big house, a mini mansion across from the lake. I'm in Chicago, and I had, they're like, you have to get married by a certain time. So I did, like, right under the wire, and I, they have lots of kids and then manage the kids on top of doing all that. So I had the 3 kids, and so I kept getting all the stuff. I had the cute shoes, and I had the red convertible and the Prada bag, which was really big at the time. And what was really weird is I had this synchronistic messaging. A couple times I heard within a really short, like a week, people had said, oh, you got to go see this woman called Sonia Choquette. Well, back then, she was starting to kind of develop her books. She had Trust Your Vibes, and so she was beginning her career, but it was pretty early on. And I said, okay, you know what? This sounds like a really fun thing to do. She's a psychic, she's a healer, she's a teacher. So I decided to make an appointment with her, ran downtown in my little convertible, and sat there. And I thought she was going to say, okay, girl, you are rocking it. Just keep on going. Keep getting more stuff. And instead, for an hour, she completely kind of bashed where I was at and everything that I had at the time, and said everything was wrong. Wrong career. She said, you're wrong guy, wrong relationship. She said, you're supposed to be this actor, teacher, healer, and you have to keep, she said, unless you hurry up and grab at the real brass ring, which ended up becoming the name of the book, she goes, it's going to be too late. And I'm like, what? Too late for what? What were you talking about? And, it sounded like this horrible tragedy or some kind of like earthquake was going to happen. I was going to get sucked into the middle of the earth. And so she goes, you're going to have to come back and do it all over again. And I just, first of all, I was, shocked, devastated. I wanted to start to cry. But then I was also at the same time thinking, oh, heck no. There is no way I'm coming back and going to do this whole life over again, because it was hard. I mean, it was hard to get where I was at, let alone to think everything was wrong and I had to start over. Right. So that was kind of my earth-shattering event where I was outed by a psychic. She called me out on everything that was inauthentic. She paved this, picture of something, none of which I had going on at the time. And then she also said, you're, clinically depressed. And I didn't tell her I was popping Prozac, so I was eating it like candy. Right. And the only reason I was doing the Prozac is because if I didn't have it, I couldn't get out of bed. I felt like, I was going to cry all the time, that dark cloud, that horrible cloud that I, just with that fogginess. And so I was, I knew that she was right with her messaging, but then she said, be an actor, an author, a teacher, and a healer. And she goes, and don't come back to me until you write that book. Look at her. I looked at her like, what book are you talking about? Because I didn't know really what she was talking about, and I knew a lot of that resonated on the inside, but I had been so focused on the outside that it was as if somebody said, okay, you might as well just pack it up because you messed up everything so far, and good luck, hit the road, Jack, and I'll see you when you fix it all. And so that's kind of where I left. That's where my story started. Well, and so it was a big lift.
Dianne, when you had met with her, did you have any kind of inkling, just on an intuitive level, prior to that meeting with her, that there were bigger things for you than what you were doing?
Well, the answer is yes. I had, and I think this happens to most of us, there were a lot of messages when I was younger, things that I loved to do, I excelled in, like the acting. I was the high school musical superstar, leads and plays. I felt like, I was in Brownies. I was picked to be on stage to be like Miss Brownie or something like that. And I thought, wow, this is really fun. I can feel the canned lights, and I had to do a performance because of that. So I'd had a lot of support when I was really young, when I was real, as myself as a little kid, that I would love to be in the performing arts. So yeah, I'd had a lot of reinforcement with it, but shut down like a gate slammed down around when my dad said, that's a terrible career. You're not going to pursue acting. I'm not going to pay for that kind of career. So, that's it. Knock it off and move on. And so I had heard the gates come down, and I think I'd shut it off. And the other thing that I thought was, part of the story is that when I was young, I'd had a vision. I had no idea what it meant, but I literally had like a vision as a kid, kind of like wasn't doing my homework. I think I was messing around when beanbag chairs were first introduced. I had this big
Yeah.
beanbag chair, and I was sitting in it. I remember looking at my TV screen, and the TV screen didn't have a picture on it at the time. It wasn't on. It was just the black screen, and that's when the TVs were giant, you know?
Yes.
There were no flat screens. And I was just looking at it, and I had this weird image of, you know, a woman and walking up on this stage, and there were a lot of people, and she was there helping people. Like there was a great gift that was being delivered, and I kind of like in my own vision, I kind of got closer to the woman to see whose face it was, and it was my face, but I was a heck of a lot older, and I kind of freaked me out. I didn't know what it meant, but I'll never forget the vision because it lasted with me until I was an adult. So when she made those comments about, you know, teacher, healer, speaker, and all that kind of stuff, somehow I think my messages had been delivered very early from Spirit that this was the right direction for you, but it was all completely shut down, put in a little,
Right.
like the Pandora's box was locked and shoved under the bed, and it was, I had no real way to know how to open it up. It wasn't until she kind of smacked me around a little bit that, and at the time I was furious with her. I thought, how could this woman say these things to me? And, who is she and who does she think she is?
That's
But, you know how it is. You want to go right after the messenger.
right.
But I knew that although it hurt, and at the time I was also grossly overweight. I was like 190 pounds. So I think I knew because of all the cover-up activities I was doing, shoving the pills down and shoving all the candy and the caffeine and, self-medicating because it hurt. It really, I think it physically hurts to not pursue your purpose. So there were tons of signs, but it was a tall order. It was a tall order. I wish it had been, maybe you should move out east, or, maybe you should just find a job in a different industry. I mean, those types of things where it could be really specific and clear. But it was tough because although here was the gift, and this is what I realized a whole lot later, especially since I've had the wonderful good fortune of traveling over the country and offering, workshops and meeting a lot of people who are in the same boat. The gift that she did offer me was clarity. And I think that that's something that to this day I have told her how much I appreciate what she did for me, but it was as if she painted the picture. And that made it a lot easier to just go after the picture. And I think and she gave me a couple of, green lights and go-aheads. And so in a scary industry like acting, who wants, how many people can become actors at 40? It seems like that's shut down. And so I think those green lights were just a blessing, a huge, huge, huge blessing, and a gift. That was one of my biggest gifts in this lifetime, actually.
So I think that's interesting that with the message that she gave you, the reading, that you came away somewhat confused because you couldn't really understand what it looked like, and yet you're saying she gave me clarity. And I think that's interesting because the message that she gave you forced you to tap into yourself, your own resources, to say, okay, what exactly, how could this possibly be executed, this plan that she's painting for me, and then moving forward with the execution of it. So you had enough clarity, not necessarily knowing it in the moment, enough clarity at that time to say, okay, so my next step is A.
Right. And that helped a lot. I think that what I've been noticing, again, just having the chance to talk to a lot of people who are in the same boat, I found that there's three key steps. Number one is to get clear. Mm-hmm. Number two is to get going, which is exactly what you're talking about. That's the actualizing part, the steps, the actual parts of this. I call it, this is the gym. This is the workout place.
Right.
If you don't pick up a weight, well the way I like to kind of position it as, Earth is the gymnasium. It's a workout place. The other side, the beautiful place of heaven, is the spa. That's where you get to rest and relax and, just be totally at peace all the time and, have that glorious, like you bring us to in beautiful meditations. But this is the workout place, and you can look at it a couple different ways. You can either watch people at the gym on TV, like looking at Julianne Michaels. You watch her do the squats, and I'm seeing her doing all this stuff, and I'm watching her abs and her six-pack. but I can promise you I am not squatting much at home, you know.
Right, right.
I'll do a little squat, but then I'll be like, okay, then I'm going to sit on TV and watch her work out, which does nothing for me. Or you can go to the gym and you can watch other people working out at the gym, and you can say, yeah, look at him working on the bell bars over there, and this guy's actually,
Right.
you know, hopping and moving and doing his, you know, actually moving his arms. Or you can actually go and start to pick some of those weights up.
Right.
And that's that second step. And then you can either, or you could do a whole program, which means I'm going to get, you know, I'm going to start with the arms, and I'm going to work on the legs, and then I'm going to work on agility, and then I'm going to work on strength. And so
Right.
all of that is the actualizing part. And I think that's the part of life that is to me, it's the most fun, because that's the part when you start to make it real. And then the third part is the get happy part. And I think that there's a lot of happiness throughout the other two, but the real get happy part that I have personally found is when the light comes on.
Yeah.
And the light comes on, and we can see it in each other. We can feel it in ourselves. But that bright light comes on inside us when we have two things. You're either, like you just, like kind of like you mentioned right at the beginning of your show, moving towards purpose,
Mm-hmm.
or and adding in that piece of contribution. And I see the light goes on in others very brightly when they start talking about those two aspects, and also the part that's just pure passion and fun. So those are the three aspects that I keep seeing the little light comes on in people's eyes. And that's what I try to help people look for in themselves, look for in others, and feel. So those are the three steps that I had to go through. My road was pretty long. You know, it took a decade, actually a little over. I mean, I'm now in the middle of it, which is a whole lot more fun. I'm in the get happy part. Thank God. Thank you, Spirit. I'm in more the fun part, because the first
Right.
two are the workouts, are real heavy workouts.
That's true.
And
That's true.
yeah, so it's been really interesting to cross through all aspects and to wade through all aspects just for myself, so I can help others apply those kind of principles that are involved in those.
Well, and I think what's critical to understand too is it takes time. It takes diligence and perseverance. And as I say to people that I work with, you know, keep your eye on the prize, whatever that prize is.
Exactly.
If you lose sight of that, well, that's when you get tired. And like, you know, the analogy you used about picking up the weights, that's when you put the weights down, you know, on the side of the couch and think, well, I'm just going to watch some reality TV instead. And it's like, no, you know, it's about really staying diligent in it. And I think that sometimes, because the process can be so long, that we get tired out. And if we're not seeing certain manifestations occur, not that the universe needs to prove anything to us, but, you know, that's sort of our human brain piece of it that interferes, like, well, you know, I need to be shown something, that this has got to be working. And it's like, no, you don't really need to be shown anything. You have to really just trust that the steps that you're taking are leading you exactly to where you need to be. And so not losing sight of that. Yeah.
And again, I've noticed, because I love to, you know, kind of my background is in business, so I love to assess situations and kind of like come up with the nuggets.
Yeah.
And I had the chance to kind of look at exactly what you're talking about and to kind of grab at some of the nuggets. I've noticed that first of all, there's this huge piece of courage that has to come towards that movement, just what what you referred to. Taking those steps requires some courage, because oftentimes there's a lot of negative messaging inside, or some things that have said, well, that's not possible, or, oh, it will never work out for me, or I don't have the abilities, or whatever it might be that has you stopped. But once you have a little bit of courage and you take that first step, I think we do look outside and say, okay, externally, am I getting any reinforcement here?
Right.
And that's the part where I think, just as you mentioned, some people can stop there. If they didn't get that little atta girl, or wow, that was awesome, I think there's kind of like a little test that goes on there, where that first piece of encouragement may or may not come as quickly as you might think.
That's right.
But once it does start to come in, and there is, and I think the universe does this to move us forward and to say, hey, that's exactly right. You are on track. Keep going. That little positive nugget where somebody wrote you a little note back that said, wow, I really liked something you put down, or that,
That's right.
you know, whatever that little stroke is. Then what happens is, I think we go into a really strong current, and that current of movement happens after the reinforcement. And I've just noticed this from my own experiences, that I need to test. I really need to take baby steps for myself when I try new things, because I too, in fact, through this whole process, was steeped in those messages where, oh, an actor has to be thin, an actor has to be pretty, an actor has to be talented, imagine that,
Right.
and experienced.
Right.
And quite frankly, when I started this whole thing, I was 190 pounds. I had not done it in 20 years. I couldn't say, I sounded like a cat whose tail was being stepped on when I was singing, and I was going into musical theater.
Right.
So it was screechy and horrible and frightening to probably hear me. And then I'm like, you know, I don't know if I have any talent in this at all. I mean, I know I loved it, but I didn't know for sure. I didn't have the external part that said, yeah, you're okay at this. You're pretty good. And so it was really hard to take all those negative messages and say, I'm not listening to you guys today, you know?
Well, and even like
and to show up.
That, you know, in your late teen years, when there was that desire, excuse me, to look at the performing arts, and your father, which was not uncommon in that time, was like, absolutely not. Like, that's not going to pay the bills, and that's not a career that is going to put you anywhere valuable. And so, right, we have the external factors involved, and then we have that internal dialogue going on that we're not always conscious of anyway. And so, yeah, when you say that it takes courage, it's like it takes a tremendous amount of courage, especially if you have external factors squashing what you're feeling anyway. Now, let me ask you this, Dianne, because in all the work that you've been doing with people, and obviously the real brass ring applies to everyone regardless of gender, but in the work that you've been doing, have you found that there's a difference in the way that women reboot versus men? And do you find that women are more inclined to seek a reboot than men?
Well, it's such a great question. Thank you for asking that. I had, you know, I think we all come in with expectations. And I originally, when I started this work, I had expected that most of the people that would come to me or be willing to do this kind of work would be women. I will admit that. And what I have found, having gone really all over the country this year, is that I am so lucky, because there's at least a third of every workshop I'm doing will have men in it. I'm finding that when we do these, we've been touring mostly with the expos, and I'm finding that quite a few men who are enlightened and open are attracted to my work. And I kind of know that this is probably because I have a really strong left brain aspect to my first part of my life was pretty much mostly left. I have a lot of gift in that I'm also very creative, and I also have the right. So I think it's kind of a just incredible gift that I can have both men and women a lot in these workshops. And what's really fun is to watch the difference in the way that the two genders work. Sometimes it's really nice to pair up. I like to pair up the men with the women, because if we do a lot of dyad work where people are working together, and this is weirdly, they're strangers, they have never met. It's better to work with someone you don't know.
Right.
And in these short exercises where they help like uncover some of the truths about why we came here, at the end of those kind of exercises, I will have both the men and the women, sometimes in tears, because it reached truth. So it seems like sometimes it's this really equal playing field. Sometimes I have the women are maybe just say a little more quicker to get into the emotional space. But I am finding it's becoming an equal playing field, and that the men are willing to go and reach their heart, and but they want to understand the process more. I'd say that's the only distinct difference I'm seeing. Some of the challenges I get from the male audience is, and I'll just give you an example. I just got this great question where I had an analytical guy who was in one of our workshops, and totally open, but he used to be like a policeman and an investigator. So he wanted to ask me some of the basic questions, and he said, okay, one of the rules that I put together 14 rules for happy living, and the very first one is it's all good. The universe is completely in abundance. Mm-hmm. Everything that we need is here. Mm-hmm. Everything that we are going to be cared for, and the universe will supply for us, as within, so without. We will get the response to what we're requesting.
That's right.
And his first question, as he raises his hand, he goes, I have a problem with your very first one. I'm like, oh, great. Okay, here we go. I got a heckler. First 20 minutes, 15 minutes into the session. I'm like, bring it on. It's okay. And he said, I don't think it's all good. He said, in my old field of work, I'm not seeing good at all. What I'm seeing is that not everybody does good things. People do bad things to each other, and the universe is not all good. And I said, well, let's look at that for a second. I said, imagine for 1 second that we have everything. We're all sitting on pillows. We're all being fed grapes. There's a big fan. There's a fountain of chocolate. And we have nothing to do or accomplish. And there's no difference. There's no black and white. There's no conflict or a challenge in what we're trying to achieve. How long do you think we're going to be happy?
That's right.
We're all chilling out on these pillows. Well, I give us like a half an hour, right, before we all are either at each other or creating some kind of controversy or some kind of conflict. So I think we're all set up to be here on Earth to go after our accomplishments, our goal, and to keep our game on. Mm-hmm. And the game is about, there's contrast. So I said, the reason that you keep bringing up these issues of, yes, not everything's perfect, people have done things to hurt each other, it's not a perfect world, and not everybody is sitting around on these pillows getting this fat feast all the time, is because I think we set it up to come down here as part of our contractual arrangement.
That's right.
To work towards our own game.
That's right.
Our own goals, our own accomplishments. And game meaning good stuff, things we're trying to achieve.
Right.
So we're driven by that gap analysis, yet the part that I was trying to bring up in the rule is that the universe does supply once we drop the fears and we work with the courage and we allow courage and fulfillment to be part of our goal. The universe is more than happy to provide it once you get rid of the fear and the lack. And so it immediately addressed the question. I thought it was a great question because it is possible to say it's all good and then there's an earthquake somewhere else.
Right.
Well,
right.
The universe created that. We're not in the universe's circle. And sometimes there's natural issues and, disasters or challenges that come up that are provided from nature.
That's right. That's right. And, classic of the law of attraction is the universe is completely balanced and harmonious. When we experience disharmony, it's because we're not in complete alignment with that universal energy. And so to stand there and say, yeah, not everything's good, it's like, yeah, I get it. But the reality is that says to me, okay, we need to be more in alignment with that harmonious energy because then it does provide us with that insight and that perspective of, like you said, everything's provided. There is an abundance, an infinite abundance of whatever we need. And it's provided to us. So yeah, I find that disconnect oftentimes, because it happens to all of us, we're out of alignment somehow with that universal balance.
Right, and being aware of the contrast.
Yeah.
If our goal here is, I think it's really simple. The goal is to love and to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And the love part is just what you said, the infinite abundance. It's the joy. It's the sun, like we had beautiful sun today. It's that feeling of that light turning on. And the learning aspect, I think, is the contrast aspect. It's the part that said, you were here with certain agreements,
Mm-hmm.
contracts, working with others,
Mm-hmm.
and to remember our passion, our track, and to get back on it if we didn't get on it the first, which a lot of us don't,
That's right.
and to rediscover that. And that's the learning part. And that's not always fun, as I'm sure we all can experience.
That's right.
But I don't know if you've noticed this, Ann, but what I've noticed even more recently is that what I keep finding is that I will take some hits. And I'll just give you a quick example. I was up for a really big commercial just last week. It was a Lyrica commercial. Would have taken me to Spain this week, so I might not have been able to have this conversation with you. But it was a great opportunity, and it was, it was an international commercial. It would have been fabulous. And it was something I really wanted. And they said 5 people are going to get this opportunity, and I was put on hold for 2 weeks. And I kept thinking, I want it. And I did everything you could do. I was throwing the runes, and I was doing my tarot cards, and I was doing everything I could to try to keep my energy positive, but not be desperate.
Yes.
But to really be clear, and this is what I want. And as it turns out, I waited 2 weeks, and at the last day of that 14th day, I was the one person they let go. So 5 other people got it. I was the 6th.
Wow.
So I'm sitting here like, okay, it's a hit. It's a little bit of a hit. Sure. I let myself get, I sit in the victim chair for like a couple hours. I let myself feel kind of bad about it. And then I'm like, okay, we're out of that. There's a reason why this didn't work out. It was going to be my son's birthday. There was a retreat I was trying to go to. I would have missed my daughter's opening night of her play. There were a lot of personal reasons why that would have been a real scarier deal at home.
You would have missed being on Soul Awakening, and that would have been a sheer
and I couldn't have talked to you. So, and so I can see where, okay, I let that go. And then immediately what I've observed is the universe then says, okay, let's get a couple of external reinforcement points. So 2 other really quick movies come along right behind it that I didn't even, one I didn't audition for, and I get to be, murdered by some cute vampire. I'm a waitress. I'm in a vampire horror film, and somebody's gonna I get to kiss this cute guy, and then he kills me. So, so I'm like, well, that's not such a bad compromise. So a couple things come in behind. I've noticed that the universe then says, okay, a couple little things you didn't get that maybe you really wanted to, but for whatever reason, that wasn't a good fit from a larger platform, which I can't see from down here. And then you get a couple of other little things that lift you back up. So I've noticed the balance really seems to come with that surrender,
Right.
And that's kind of the beauty of it, in that it doesn't always go a lot of things don't go my way, but I'm trying to stay in that place of, I really wanted this, maybe it didn't work out, but there's really some great stuff coming in right behind it. And it does happen. It's just kind of a fun thing to really remain in that place of feel bad for a minute. You can embrace your feelings of, I let myself go there.
Right, of disappointment, because
complain,
right, which is totally legitimate. It's like, because we all are working towards something, and when we don't reach that goal, it's a natural human reaction to have some disappointment around it. But it's true, if you can stay focused on the synchronicities and the subtleties, like you said, of these other little things coming in, because some people may have looked at that and looked at these smaller gigs coming in and being like, well, I didn't want that. Well, that's not what I was asking for. And so they could miss that piece of it, that it's like the universe knows what's best. We don't always know what's best. We know what we want, but it's not always what we need, especially in that moment. And yeah, that's the balancing act too, I have found, is really just constantly being afforded those opportunities of practicing, taking a deep breath, saying, okay, so then that wasn't meant for me. That wasn't where I was supposed to spend some energy. Okay, so where am I supposed to spend my energy? And you'll get those little synchronicities popping up. If you're paying attention to them, then you notice. And and like you said, it sort of recharges you to keep moving forward.
Yes, and here's the really funny part. I I do a very simple tarot reading for myself when I have these kind of questions or things coming up. And the message I had received right before, like a week and a half into it was, it's time to rest, it's time to rejuvenate, you have some inner work to do, and it was that sense of it's really time for self-care in a way so that you can move forward. And I got that reading, and I have to tell you, I was mad at my reading because I kind of knew what they were trying to say to me. What they were trying to say is, instead a retreat came up. I'm going to go on a retreat this weekend that I got the last spot in. It was just saved open for me. So I had the chance to actually go and say, look, maybe another way of spending this time will be more beneficial
Right.
than that. So I was able to kind of fill it very quickly with other things and to remain, pretty positive and say, it's fine. Other things are going to come up. No worries. And I also probably would have had massive guilt for missing
Sure.
the shows, and
Right.
I was going to miss some big stuff, and especially your show. So I was,
See that?
and so I didn't want to make that phone call because I really enjoy talking to you, and so so it was one of those things where the beauty of the synchronicity is that I'm not driving this bus.
That's right. That's right. As much as we
The
want
big bus.
that's right.
Has another driver, and
That's right.
and so that's kind of the fun part. But it was kind of nice is it kind of was illustrating again. You get that little external maybe the external reinforcement was taken away for a minute, but it
Right.
doesn't mean you stop. You go for
That's
that
right.
next brass ring. You grab for the next opportunity, and you keep saying yes. Yes, that's exactly what I was asking for. I got a couple of other opportunities. Let's do that. Yes, this is going to be a really wonderful, maybe a one-off.
Right.
But
Right.
sometimes the
Exactly.
one-offs, you don't have no idea where they're going to take you.
That's right.
And that's kind of that. So that's kind of a long story of saying, yeah, you keep going, but you don't ever stop pointing your shoes in the correct direction.
That's right. That's right. And like you said, using that courage to keep moving forward is key to it. Now, Diane, can you talk a little bit more about those 14 rules that you list in the Shortcuts for Happy Living that you were referring to the first one that the gentleman had brought up at one of your seminars? Can you talk about a few of those other shortcuts for happy living?
Yes, absolutely. And they have changed my life. Honestly, I live by them now. I share them with all private clients, teach them in the workshops, and also manage the family with these rules. And they've changed everything for me, and I think hopefully they're changing lives for other people, and they're simple. It's kind of the executive summary. I've read thousands of self-help books, metaphysical books,
Hmm.
philosophy books, and spirituality, everything about that. And I tried to put it down in a palette that was easier to understand and really look to when you had different challenges and questions. So, for example, I'm just going to go through a few of them just because, some of the basics. One is, of course, what you think about, you bring about. That is the
Hmm.
fundamental rule, and just to really mind your mind.
That's right.
Be focus on if you have those negative thoughts, if you have self-deprecating thoughts, just be aware and always reach for the thought that feels better.
Hmm.
There is, in every situation, I challenge you to take that one extra moment and find a thought that will move you up to that little higher platform. There's something that's going to get you excited versus any thought that is not positive or moving you again towards that goal that you have.
That's
And
right.
here's another rule, and this one I love. It's about leveraging your alignment. What I found is, it is the essence of life. It's the mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical, about earlier, alignment. And when things aren't moving positively, and we've been able to put people on this really diagnostic, I'm doing a whole second book about how to really get into this alignment, how to measure it even further. That mental, emotional, spiritual, physical alignment is what is moving us in towards joy, or in some cases there's some resistance, or there's something that's not feeling good. Maybe it's on the physical side, maybe it's on the emotional side, where you have something that is you're not feeling emotionally supported. Or the one thing that you really can look at even on the emotional side is to be emotionally expressed. That's something where you can just look at your own alignment and say, okay, what part's out right now? What part's really kind of like feeling down to me, or what part is not getting the support that it needs? Oftentimes the mental is one where especially I'm going to say, just generalize, with people who have busy jobs, mentally they're usually pretty challenged. So that's often the one that's out. Sometimes it can be, but it's the one that I think in our society we're like a lot of big brains walking around, but the part we forget are the other parts, the heart, and going for looking to the body for its messages. Another rule that is really, really helpful is, to use that emotional radar detector, diving deeper into the emotional and listen to it. When it ever goes beep, 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 it's telling you something.
That's right.
I always say what sounds weird is weird. Do you ever have that where people will say something and you have that weird, like, what?
Yes, exactly.
We call it crazy talk.
Right.
When you hear crazy talk, it's crazy talk because you're either missing some information, someone is out of authenticity, there is part of the story that is not coming through that you probably needed to know that you're not getting.
That's a good point. That's true.
And I even my kids were upset about one situation recently, and I'll say, okay, what you guys just mapped out for me, it's the whole Mean Girls in high school. I said, you're in crazy talk now, because someone not letting you come to the pool party because you invited somebody to something else is crazy talk. Do you hear how crazy that is? It doesn't even make sense.
Right.
So you're getting all worked up about something that we cannot even understand, which means that there's missing information and there's a lot of third partying going on here. So you really might want to either dive deeper, get cleaner, figure out what's going on. So when those little beeps start going off on the inside on that emotional radar detector, you're going to have to do some investigation, remove yourself from it, possibly. You could eliminate yourself completely from the situation, or you're going to really have to start digging and figuring out, why am I being so triggered by this thing?
That's really, an awesome tool. That's an awesome tool because it really is applicable to every area of your life.
Right. And it's always going, and when it doesn't always go off when you're highly sensitive to it, I think we can manage it, but when it starts to go off, just really start to trust it. And that took me years. I think I wasn't even until I was like my mid-40s where I had to honor this incredible sensitive body that is trying to communicate all the time. So it took me lots of years to really give it the credibility that it deserves. And so that's just one of them. And then another one is, about managing your wave. I look at everything like if I'm sitting here drawing a line with my hands, if you could see it. But imagine a line. And imagine if your hand kind of goes up and down on that line. That we're beings of light. And so we all move in these wave patterns. Nothing is straight. Nothing is stationary. Nothing. It's always constantly in motion. And what our ideal situation is not to have the world perfect. It's to have this line and to always be moving. You move a little above, like we said, you get a couple good things, and then a couple things go below the line, and then a couple things go above the line. And that's just a normal movement. Well, sometimes, and this is where I started, I call myself a rageaholic. I had Rageaholics Anonymous, where I used to fly way above the line and be like all of a sudden screaming about something.
Yeah.
And then I'd be way below the line feeling like so depressed that I couldn't function, and why are we here, and oh my gosh, I can't believe I have to do one more lousy piece of work I don't want to do.
Yeah.
And then I'd draw way above and something would be great, and then way down below. Well, ideally, we're not reactive, hardly at all. I mean, we're humans, but we're not super reactive. We get that most of this is external to us, and that it ties into the next rule, which is you only have to manage your circle. And when you're managing your circle, you can keep your wave on this nice little line. But I think the challenge is that other people's circle we think we're supposed to be in the middle of, or the universe's circle. Well,
Right.
You can stand there and draw literally like a 3-foot circle around yourself, and that's the only thing you've got to deal with from now until the time you pass. And it helps cut out all that negative noise.
That's an awesome point. Mm-hmm.
And then there's a lot of ambient noise that's coming into our own waves. So if we're going to go back to the wave concept, the ambient negative noise can take your nice little wave pattern and either flatten it or bring it down or bring it up. So I always try to notice, like when my wave is going crazy, if there's any people who are either stomping on my wave or, they've just got this negative energy that kind of is shoving my wave below the line. And so I've really been noticing where it's coming in, whose circle it is, and I try to give it back to the other person. Or, quite frankly, I've had to eliminate relationships that don't feel good because it just was so unhealthy and I couldn't keep myself on the line.
Right.
So those are just some examples, and they kind of go on, but the bottom line is you've got to love your life.
And I'm glad that you're coming out with a second book that's going to really detail some of these tools for people to really implement. I liked the piece about mind your mind and sort of shifting your thoughts when you find that you're thinking negative thoughts or hearing some of that negativity that is not necessarily based in reality. In fact, most of it is not based in reality. And one of the tools that I have used, because it was not always easy for me to shift my thought when I would catch myself thinking something negative. One of the tools that I used, that I would just repeat the word love over and over and over and over until I could shift my energy enough to start thinking a different thought. So when I would catch myself in the moment, I would just say, okay, oh, I'm doing that again, or wait a minute, I just noticed that negative thought, whether it's about myself or a situation or another person or whatever. And that, for me, at least, was enough of a shift that it's like, sometimes it would be too difficult for me to try to think of a positive thought, if I'm in the moment. So it's like, okay, let me just recognize that I'm thinking this and I'm going to shift it. And that, for me, was extremely effective. So I liked that part of your rules, that one of those rules, because that really resonated with me, that was something I had really had to work on more diligently years ago than now, but I still have to work on it. It's not like that ever goes away. Now, Dianne, we have just like 2.5 minutes left. Can you tell people how to reach you, how they can attend some of your seminars, some of the things that you have coming up?
Yes. We have, first of all, the book is on Amazon.com. It's called The Real Brass Ring. It's on Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com. And I have a website called LiveYourEverything.com, and it has the schedule of all the events. Just now putting up all the events for the fall, and we'll be traveling to a variety of states, offering the workshops. And the next step will be to, I hope with the second book will come a piece that will be on the website so that we can actually educate, provide some of these tools, and work together online so that people can actually get the benefit from this, even if it's not in person. And I think that will be the ultimate utopia kind of thing where we can have the in-person events whenever possible, but also give these tools and share them in an online format, really simple levels. I have a level 1, level 2, and level 3 right now where you can get going, get clear, get going, and then get happy and move together and then create a community so we can all support each other in doing this.
Awesome. Oh, that's great information. Very good. Dianne, thank you so very much for joining me tonight. It was a pleasure as usual.
I just love talking to you, Anne. You're so great. I just have to say that. You're so fun to talk to.
Thank you so much. Thanks again, everyone. I'll see you here next Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Good night.